That away.
Thank you. Okay, hey, it's great to see all of you here. And we're welcoming the Doyen family and their history of their family and the businesses that they ran uptown here in Wellsburg, starting back in what year? 1880, way back. It was the first general store here in Wellsburg, and that was organized by the Doyen family. And they know a lot more about this than I do, so I'm really curious and looking forward to. We'll have questions, yeah, and I think that's kind of how they would like to proceed, is that they would like you to ask, they will recognize you, and you can speak. So, 3 of the Doyen cousins are going to talk today. There's more of them here. There's 4 of them here. Is Judy going to speak too? No. Okay, so we have Monica, Meryl, Ginny, and Julie are here today, and I'm going to let them take it away from here. A couple of announcements for later. If you don't have one of these postcards telling you about the July events here at the historical home, you can pick one of these up on your way out. There is coffee, or tea I should say, and lemonade, cookies that were made with the recipes that the open house of the Doyen Furniture Store used in the 1960s, for sure, 50s, 60s. Yeah. So those recipes were here, and we found, and Ginny shared those with us this week. So we made a few of those cookies for you today.
And they are delicious. I tried the Paula cookies. They taste very good. So oatmeals are next.
And also, all of you are welcome to take a postcard with you today. Just take any of them that you might like. There's probably how many, Tammy?
20.
20 for sure to choose from. So they're over on a display there with other items that we have for sale. But for today, the postcards are free. So take one with you. Okay, so without any further ado, Monica.
I guess.
Thank you so much for coming.
I drew the short straw. So I'm Monica Doyen, and I was John Jr.'s daughter, and came into the Doyen family in 1970 when my mom married John, and we moved to Wellsburg, and I inherited a wonderful family and cousins as well. Ginny's really the expert on all the genealogy. She's been working on stuff, and you know, as time goes by, we've all gone our separate ways, and it's been in the last 3 years when we've all kind of come back together. So it's been a wonderful reunion for all of us to be back together, and then to be able to do this and to say, oh, I've got that picture, and then I show up with a big tub of stuff, and I don't have any of that. Okay, we can make copies, no problem. So my brother Joe couldn't be here today, but he lives in Conrad as well as I do. And then our oldest, Meryl's brother Dave, is the eldest of all of us, and he's still in Council Bluffs, and he and his wife couldn't be here today. And my husband is here, but he's around the corner eating cookies, I think. So with that in mind, and I have a story to tell about the cookies. Mom and Dad had just met, and you know, the big sale was happening in February, so Mom and her parents, my grandparents, they thought it would be such a good idea, you know, to make all these cookies for the sale, that would make a good impression on the new son-in-law and the new family and all of that. So they slaved away, and they made dozens of cookies. Well, they stored them at the funeral home up in the attic upstairs, which Leonard Gelder was remodeling for the new family to arrive. And the sale came, and the sale went. And Dad said something about, gosh, he said, we ran kind of short on cookies. All the cookies were still in the attic. They never got served. So we had a lot of frozen cookies after that to eat. So hence, that's probably why I put on a lot of pounds when I moved to Wellsburg. Anyway, We've been talking about Grandpa and Grandma Doyen and our great grandparents and pictures that we didn't recognize or I didn't recognize, and so it's always I remind you, please write on the back of your pictures for your relatives who they are and what their relationship is, because you get younger ones, and Joe looks at, he's so much younger than all the rest of us, and he looks at things and he says, "Who is this?" And I'm going, well, let's see. So then today I'm like, okay, write that on the back so that we kind of know what's going on. So just a word of advice for that would be nice to do. A story that Dad always told about how great Grandpa Doyen got started in the funeral business. He was here in the hardware and furniture business, and there was an outbreak of scarlet fever in Wellsburg, and no one would go into any of the homes, and he was the only one, and I can't remember who else went with him. That part of the story I don't remember, but he went in and removed a couple of children that had passed away from scarlet fever, and that's, lo and behold, how the Doyen Funeral Home got started.
Oh.
So that's the story I have, and then I came on the scene after the new furniture store had been built, and of course the funeral home being put onto the house, and like I always told friends of mine, living in a funeral home, we always had guests for the holidays. Mother would show me her big brown eyes and look at me, and I knew I'd been had. So with those tidbits of information, I'll turn it over to whoever's the volunteer.
Well, like I said, I'm not real good at this kind of stuff, but
Hold pictures or anything?
you can hold these.
Okay, you want me to hold them up or pass them around, or?
Well, we could pass some of them around,
Okay.
but Jurgen Charles, and that was not the name he was born with. It was Jurgen's one, it was all on his mom. I'd have to look back on there, it might even be in there. But he came, and in 1880, when Grundy County, I think, was only 1 year old, he built the first store in Wellsburg. And it was in where the library is. I think it was always in that same block. And then by 1885, that whole block burned down. And he didn't have any insurance. There was not much left of the town of Wellsburg.
Huh.
But he restarted and rebuilt the store that stood until 1954. And then they tore that down and built the store that was there. The grand opening was in 1956. And with that, I'll show you some pictures. I guess I could show. I bet you got some of those too.
They're out on the.
I don't know if you want to pass those around. These are still from the old store, because it's 1951. Just kind of the interior of what they had. That's my grandpa, Doyen, in the office.
Huh.
And in the back is a picture of my dad. I remember that truck well, because that old schoolhouse, it was where Rupert Meyer built his house, and it was the old schoolhouse. But the Doyen Store bought that as putting extra stuff in. But all the scale gas, does anybody remember all those little scale gas tanks that we would bring out and hook up so your gas stoves would work? But that's where they kept all that. It was just like a big propane tank, actually. And it was a big deal to go there. I bet Julie remembers, we got to play on the platform.
Yep.
And then we got to go explore this old school. And my Aunt Louise Heilman, I don't know if anybody remembers her, she could tell stories about, I wish now, you're not very smart back in your teens, I wish I would have recorded all that and remembered it, because she could tell stories about what happened in there. So that's just some pictures with that.
Cindy, you have a question?
Yeah.
The first picture that you showed us,
Mm-hmm.
is that the original store?
Mm-hmm.
Huh?
Mm-hmm.
That was original store.
That was the original store, made in 1880. It only lasted 5 years though. So then it burned to the ground. Everything burned down. And let's see.
Do you have any idea how that fire started, or just that's kind of common then?
It was very common, I think, for things to burn down.
Yeah.
But it said in the articles that I found that he didn't have any insurance, but he did rebuild. Now, in some of them, it said that he also started the blacksmith shop, which was the old Eckebrod home, which I was thinking was west of town. But when you look back into the wells to memory, there was an Eckebrod house about where the funeral home is now, and there was a blacksmith shop there. And I found 2 articles that said he was involved with that. He was an undertaker. He was the first postmaster in the town of Wellsburg. He was on the consuls, undertaker.
There's a picture of the council out on the table.
Yeah, he was, that was the 1908. His son-in-law was the mayor at that time.
And then there's an article in 1957 was our first anniversary sale, always in February, and 1,100 people registered.
That's a lot.
And the first one was in February of 1956. And it said there we didn't serve cookies. We had donuts. I was too young. Cousin Merrill, do you remember donuts?
No, I don't.
But otherwise, it was, and I bet all the cousins, Monica, you might be too young. Cookie. It was cookie mania in our house for a couple days for sure. All those blue roasters up and down the hallways with specific instruction, don't open and don't eat any of them. Because my Aunt Florrie and my mom, and I think my grandma and my Aunt Jan, she made the ginger snaps, I think.
Right, yep.
Made a lot, all those cookies you ate were homemade, so. And I remember it was such a big deal after we got out of school to be driven down to the store, and we got to help. We got to serve coffee and the cookies, fill cookie trays, and it just was a fun time. So all the salesmen, the Sealy, the Skell gas, it was something else. But on there, that oatmeal crispy was on there too. And this was the article when Uncle Boydie sold it. And it has a lot of information about the funeral home. And I brought these pictures along because when my great-grandpa was the funeral director, there was no specific funeral home. They went to the person's house who had passed away and did all the embalming there. And this picture, I happened to find in some pictures we got from Grandma Egypt. It would be my great-grandpa Harry. And I don't know, maybe some of you can tell me. It's all the same house, but in the first one he's draped in a cloth, and in the next 2 he's in a casket. So I don't know. I really don't know. And then, of course, there's always the fun of the Wellsburg Days floats. Julie and I always seemed, and Merrill, you got out of it towards the end, we always seemed to be on the Wellsburg Days float. It was a big deal going down to that old schoolhouse and stuffing all that paper, tissue, making flowers, making the Wellsburg Days float. And I have a couple of pictures of that too. It was a fun time. Some of these pictures now, if we would have done that with blackface, I would think our parents and us would probably be in jail. But back then, nobody really thought twice about that. And backtracking a little bit, I don't know, I probably will set this out. It's pretty fragile. But this was the paper of February 1956. And a lot of it is all about, see how wide those papers were? It's all about the opening of the store, the first anniversary store. And one full page of all the prizes that they gave.
Just read some of those prizes off, because I couldn't believe it when I read the prizes.
On this one, the first prize was a $214 Maytag ironer. Second prize was a Sealy Firmatic mattress, which only cost $59.95, and a Mohawk rug, $59.95, a platform rocker for $29.95, and a floor lamp for $21.95, and a fry pan for $21.95, an oak coffee table for $13.95. It was, and I don't remember at all the store that was for it. Meryl kind of has some memories of that. I only remember the store that was there before the library. But at the time, it was one of the biggest stores in Grundy County. And you walked in, there was lots of merchandise. Probably the thing that, we had to dust a lot. On Saturdays, we had to go up there and dust the store. I think today that's why I don't like the dust. But at that time, there was no extension to the funeral home down there. It was just the house. But the caskets were up in the funeral home. That one whole room to the south was the casket room. And I did not like cleaning in there. Right for that.
This was at Harry Moss's place,
Mm-hmm.
out on the farm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I have some of those too.
Okay. Yeah, and a lot of the houses, because even the house that my son Brian lives in right now, we lived there for a while, and when we moved, I couldn't quite figure out why on the porch was there a door going into the kitchen, and then right next to it, there was a door going to the living room. And so I asked, like Henry and Vernis, and they said, well, the grandparents built that, so when they did pass away, they could get the casket into the living room through the porch and get it back out. So we did take that door out because it took up a lot of that little living room. You don't have that door anymore, Brian. We took it out. But there's a whole bunch. There's grand prizes in here too. A lot of ads. You can tell who did all the service work. I probably will leave that one back because this one's about ready to fall apart. Okay. Let's see what I have here. A lot of the pictures are in the back there. But I did want to bring us, everybody remembered the Golden Age Restorium, which now Burdette owns. I have a lot of memories with that. I don't know if you have any, you're probably too young. But it was neat going in there. I doubt if I was a lot of help, but my great aunts would let me serve tea to the people who were there. And I remember she had white hair and she always sat in that black leather chair in between where the fireplace room is and the dining room. And she never really looked up and talked. And then there was that older gentleman that was upstairs, and I got to bring tea to. And I got my tea in what was the maid's pantry. So I thought that was pretty cool.
The one upstairs on this room, this side, that was a house.
Okay.
I know because when we painted the house, it had screens made labels whose room.
Ah, that's neat. I really thought that house was pretty cool. And that would have been our great-grand, let's see.
Mother's brother.
Yes, Chris made that. So it I've always liked that house. There's lots of memories in there. And also, this was in the paper in 1956 of the interior of the new store. And then a thank you, because I think that first time there was over 2,000 people that came up.
There was, I have articles that talk about, at one time there were 2,500 people that came to a sale. And those are people who registered, so, I mean, you know, how many people walked in that didn't even sign the book. So, I think that's the word.
And then I think this picture's back there too.
Yep, those are back.
And then I have this, but I really don't remember, it had to be in the 70s time when Keith Usman purchased the store. It had to be in the 70s, but I said, I've been doing this for a while with genealogy, and unfortunately, we didn't put the date on that.
See, as I told you, write the dates on everything.
Yes, yes. And just the picture of that store, like I said, there's a lot of memories in there. I bet David was here, he could tell us a lot.
He remembered dusting too.
Didn't you have to dust?
David.
Yeah, he said that when we met. He said, you remember all that dust?
Yes.
And then it's more pictures of lots of coffee. And then, I don't know what year that was taken either. I found that in a box of stuff on the other, opposite side. And this picture, and I think Monica has the for real print on that back there, is, that's the grand opening. That's 1956, so. Mine is probably a copy from that picture. Brian had to do that genealogy project. So, and the rest of I kind of have, there's obituaries, which have you ever noticed on the old time obituaries, they tell you everything, don't they? More than what you want to know. But I would say our great grandparents, they were well liked, and he also went to New York and brought, like Joanna's other brothers, he escorted groups of 28. He was big at bringing the immigrants back towards Iowa. He made, I think, a few trips. He didn't start out in the business here. When they came from Germany, they lived by Ackley, and so did Johanna Neeson. They got married, and then they moved back to Chicago. And he worked for an ice company there for about 4 years, and then decided to come back to Grundy County, and that's when the railroad decided to go through Wellsburg, and that's when he did his first general store. And we sold in the 70s. I just think your dad was having health problems. And my Uncle Boydie went more part-time then. He did, or did he keep the funeral business?
He kept the funeral business.
He kept it. And my dad, it seemed like after my mom passed away, he just lost interest in the store. So, are there any questions? I would say it's Grandma because he just was that kind of guy. I had to drive him around, I don't know if you guys had to. And we had to stop at the Everline Sisters, and he had to talk to them. And he was quite a grandpa, he was a good grandpa. So, he brought us maraschino cherry ice cream cones from, was it Sam and Tilly who owned that restaurant then? I don't know how he ever carried 2 maraschino cherry ice cream things, and then he always had to pinch our cheeks. I know.
Remember the story? He drove the car uptown, and he walked back. He was living with Dad in the funeral home, and Dad said, "Dad, what are you doing home?" "Well, the car won't start." We ran out of gas. He was on Main Street, and he wouldn't. Yeah, we didn't think about putting gas in it.
Well, when your mom and our Uncle Boydie started dating,
Oh gosh,
and
yeah.
they were in Grundy Center,
Yeah.
and Grandpa was not very, he was ill, that he had leukemia. And I seemed to be his driver, which I loved. Yeah. But he came over and he wanted to go to the funeral home to see the person, because I think, boy, I thought, why do you want to go there? You don't even know. Well, he wanted to check out your mom. So there they talked, and I sat on a chair being probably 16 or 17, just got, oh, when are we gonna go home? The only thing I wish all those drives in the country I would have paid more attention to, because he would tell me who
I'd get over it.
I did not do that. I didn't listen well. But as far as I know, the funeral home or the hardware store was always in that same block. I think so too. And like I said, I don't know a whole lot else. I've got some pictures, and you guys have probably seen it in here too, of the old store with the merchandise. Oh yeah, right here. That would be the old store, and that has to be quite an old picture.
I have
So, do you have the, okay, yeah, see, I only have it in here. So, cousin Meryl.
I don't know. You did really good.
Very good.
What's that?
I have a little bit of something, I don't know how important this is,
Oh,
but
cool.
my grandpa Sigsma,
Mhm.
George Sigsma was, not the one that you called me, but the grandpa,
Oh, okay.
my mother's dad. Anyway, they moved to Wellsburg from the farm, I think in the late 30s.
Mm-hmm.
And George and Harvey were still in high school, so that when the war broke out, they were planning to the war. But what I wanna tell you is that my grandma never did get to shop for anything, but Grandpa was a great fan of sitting and talking to your ancestors at the Doyen Hardware. And so one day he came home with a china cabinet.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard about that a little bit once in a while, but that's now in my house, and I got a Doyen china cabinet set in my.
Do you really? Oh, that's really neat.
I've always
That's
enjoyed
really
it. It's nothing. I enjoy it very much, but you know,
Mhm.
if it has a personal tie, then.
Absolutely. I just remember the carpets and the Maytag appliance. We sold Maytags.
Yep.
And
Nothing
the
else.
furniture. And then there was a workroom in the back. Downstairs was only a partial basement down
And
there.
that
I
was a
never
lot of
really
it. And they had it in 1940.
Are the records of the funerals that they've had still available someplace?
No.
No.
Okay, so I thought, I'm
No.
sorry about
I'll be
that.
honest with you, those were just, we destroyed those for the,
Oh,
just sensitivity to families and confidentiality.
Okay.
So, that's why. So if you're gonna be mad, you can be mad at me.
When was the scarlet fever outbreak?
You know,
I don't
at all?
remember.
Cause I don't, and that one article about when Boydie, retired, it maybe will say in there when he started, Jurgen.
Yeah, might be in there.
And I don't know when and why he changed his name, and because it was then Joseph, which makes sense from Jurgen, but I don't know where he got the Charles, because it's really, his gravestone is Jurgen S.
Yeah.
Is the correct name, so,
And that's who Joe was named after. My brother's named after. Great grandfather.
mhm. And his family, Jurgen's family, they're buried in Alden, Iowa. They stayed that way. Have some pictures of
Has it
that.
ever been reported how many churches when they moved here? How many churches were in town?
Ooh, I think if you read, especially Burdette, you probably have it in yours, there's a lot of information in these older books. I do know, and it sounds like it's across from Merrill, there was an older, one of the first churches, and it was known as the Doyen Church. Now, I
Really?
don't know if anybody has any information
I think
on
maybe
that.
where Henry Hippen's station was, I think that
Mhm.
might have.
Really?
on
It's
the
in
corner
one of
there,
these
yeah.
two. It was known as the Doyen Church until they went ahead and built the one where the Reformed Church is right now. It's not the same building, but,
I think,
I don't know why it was called the Doyen Church.
I think when they built the first German Reformed here,
Mhm.
when they were going to build a new one, J.C. Doyen bought it, the building, and
Okay.
moved it, and that's how it got to be the Doyen Church.
Burdette, do you know that, public school that we use as a warehouse, was that always there or did that get moved?
Across
That
the
was-
road.
There's
That was-
pictures of it being moved.
I've got a picture of it being moved, yeah.
Okay, cause Merrill and I thought, cause it always looked like it had always been there.
No.
But no, it was where Linda Town lives now.
Yeah, where the old school was that we went to.
Yes. that answers a question for us
Yeah, I
then.
just
Because, you
think-
know, when we had, it was no longer a school, it
Yeah.
means a lot of old furniture was in there. Back when Jurgen was in there, then I think he had a building right beside there that had the caskets in. He owned quite a few of those lots on lot, 7. In that block 7, he had quite a few.
Jenny, there's a picture here in the historical house somewhere of school children standing in front of that building as it stands over there. So it was a school, even after it was moved over to that spot.
Okay.
But I think I have some ancestors that went to school in that building.
Okay. And I think, didn't the store, and some of you might remember, in 1954, when they demolished that store, the Doyen's Furniture had to operate out of somewhere. Was it down in that warehouse?
It was.
Okay.
It was there already,
Okay,
because I know Harold Weichers tore down the old store,
okay.
and then Cervetti, Joe Cervetti, they built a new one.
Okay.
Okay, the old school, tell me where that was. Is that where the Kramers live now?
Yep.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and it sounds like where the Doyen Funeral Home is right now, did that used to be like the blacksmith shop and delivery?
No, that was across the street
I
where
think-
Purvis had his, implement business, wasn't it?
Yes.
Burdette, do you know?
Well, I was thinking they old.
Alice Chalmers built.
My grandpa Doyen, John Doyen Senior, is the one who built the house
Yes.
down there.
Right.
But I don't know.
I thought that the blacksmith shop was where Herman Hibbins' station was.
Right around there.
Yeah,
And I read your place was the ice skating rink.
Really?
Yeah.
There was one.
Yeah, why you're so hard-hearted?
I read my book last night.
Wow.
But, yeah, but,
Yeah,
because of Merrill, you're on.
Really? Well, I don't really have any more to say. You two did, unless there's any questions I can
Yeah, you got some questions for
answer.
us. You had some though. You were telling me something. I can't remember. You remember a little bit more of the older store.
Not much more. Does anybody have any questions? Cindy, you said you were
No,
gonna
I
have.
couldn't think of any.
I really don't, Jenny kinda covered everything. I
Oh,
know
and
that,
we do have some things, remember the giveaways that we have?
yeah, we've
the-
got those
The
back
coin
there.
versus
Coin
the
purses
brain
and
bonnets.
Here,
spoons, yeah.
Yeah.
But, I know, as far as the Restorium, our Aunt Bertha was in there, and then her sister from Marshalltown, Florence. Those two ran it when it was here in town, because her husband had died. His name was Andrew Meyer. He was a brother to, John Meyer, that was the sheriff in Grundy County. And they had a grocery store, Andrew and Florence in Marshall, but then when her husband died, then they started up the Restorium together, so, and that probably wasn't, because she died in like 1958, I suppose only 4 or 5 years maybe.
Yeah, because I remember going, then Florence went to Marshalltown.
Back to
And remember
yeah.
those big white parrots she had? She had these big parrots.
Real ones?
Yes.
Really?
They talked.
But yeah, because her son lived in Marshalltown, he was a funeral director too, Warren Meyer.
I remember.
Yes.
I have a question. I heard, not so long ago, don't remember the last, but that, the very first, let's go back to the very beginning of Doyen Harbor, that it was maybe the one that was lost in the fire, I don't know.
Mhm.
But anyway, that they started the store and they had more of an all-purpose store with groceries and everything.
Yeah, I know.
So I never heard that, but I thought that was an interesting.
Because they used to
It
sell,
may have been that way.
they used to sell McCormick Deering implements too. Because I
Yeah.
had a yardstick at home, it's a
Yeah.
J.C. Doyen Estate and then McCormick Deering.
Yeah.
And like stoves and Alpenkräuter, I think they even
Some
sold
of them
it.
are hearing that, they had a lot of
Yeah.
early
Yeah,
farm,
right.
That went up to Bevings after that, I think, huh?
I think so.
Yeah, Bevings.
I just have a comment, I wasn't raised here, but John and Gert used to tell the story that your grandpa, after your grandma died, walked to the cemetery every single day.
Yeah, that's what they said. Yeah,
She was quite young when she passed
Yeah.
Oh,
away.
what she
yeah, she was only,
I never met her.
I think
was
she
born
had
in 52.
leukemia
Yeah.
also. She was
Yeah,
in,
they both died of
Yeah.
leukemia.
she was in her 50s. I know I was only 6 months
Oh.
old when she died.
Oh, but you had leukemia.
Really? I thought too it was leukemia.
Okay, 2 against 1.
No, we'll have to look into that one. I bet it's in the obituary, I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, but,
Yeah, so that's about all I got.
yeah, she died in
Monica-
1951,
Right, January.
yes.
And she was originally from Ackley. She was a sugar.
Well, I have a story about that.
Oh.
Her sister was married to my grandfather's brother, way before any of this transpired, and he was quite a womanizer.
It was?
He was my great uncle, and then he left her, and then,
Potatoes, people should know.
and then, Grandma Doyen's sister, I can't think of her name.
I think
right now.
it was it Cora?
Cora, she married somebody else, whatever. But anyway, so there was already a connection,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. But yeah, he was a not very nice person.
There was a story about when they moved Doyens bought the old school from here and moved it over there, and they paid $400 for it.
Mm-hmm.
We've got pictures of that being moved. And then when they had storage up there, they had the old horse-drawn hearse upstairs. Well, there was one guy, I don't know the name, but evidently he liked to tip it a little bit and get a little schnocker. So he would crawl up there, and there were, like used furniture and things like that. There was a couch, and he'd take a nap and sleep it off. Well, some kids figured that out. So what they did is they climbed in the hearse and put a bed sheet over, and when he was kind of in the stage, they sat up and waved at him, and there was a little door on the back side of that building, and with a hook on it. He went right through the hook in the door, and he bailed out of the second floor.
That was in the old,
Uh-huh.
really? Was there an elevator then that they could, was
They
it
must have
upstairs?
somehow got it up there, or
I
dismantled
don't
it.
remember that, but-
Oh, I don't
yeah.
either.
Probably like Betty Hardware has, you know that.
Yeah,
That's
that
what
could
I
be.
have in mind.
'Cause I know there was a garage.
But he took off and running.
Yeah, I bet.
I can't believe you tell a story.
Okay, anything else?
There is a picture someplace of a Dr.
Chin? Yeah.
in front of an old school. Is that the school that was down here?
Boy, that I think he was the first mayor, wasn't he, Dr. Chin?
Now, that's a picture of the store they tore down in 1954
That's out.
on the bottom there,
Okay.
which I'm not familiar. It looks kind of like the one that burned out.
You should pass.
You're getting into tender territory when you talk about 1950s.
You probably remember lots of good things.
I was married 1951. So I should
Yeah, I
get
know.
long in the tooth.
I know he played in the band. The Wellsburg had a little
Oh, yeah.
band.
Oh, yeah.
It sounds like he just, if you read his obituary, he was really well liked. I think he tried to help a lot of people that was involved, and
But
it's,
that was the case with not many of the people in town. They all took part in everything, and I think even as, not that many years ago, all the business people, let's say, would be very active in whatever promotion there was on.
I know Henry Neeson, Mrs. Doyen's brother, he would sponsor people on the Norddeutsche Lloyd line. He would pay the money up front for the passage, and then they would come and then they would work for him for a year or two or something like that. I've got one of those papers at home, and somewhere I have a picture too of the Doyen Store and Heiko's, this little guy in front of it.
Yeah.
Reformed church.
I don't know who the rest of them are, but you know.
Yeah, Jordan came over to the United States when he was 14 years old with his parents, and they settled. It always says near Ackley, so I'm assuming not in it. And Johanna Neeson came with one of her brothers in passage. And then the other brothers came, Jurgen went and escorted them in a group of 28 back to Iowa, then a few years later, I think.
Could have
So-
been Tom Neeson, Thomas Neeson.
Thomas Neeson, that was Johanna's dad, right? Thomas,
Yeah, but she had a brother, Tom.
Tom too. Yeah, because
I-
Tom and Chris came later.
Yeah.
She came with another brother all by herself, and I think of that
George?
too. That had to be scary.
They came from Germany.
Yeah, Loga, Ostfriesland, Germany.
I think I have an article where it tells who came when. From the Neeson.
Okay.
Could Mr. Doyen speak either High German or Low German?
Well, he spoke German because I know when my grandpa got married to my grandma,
Just found out.
my grandpa, not my great grandpa, they went to the German church or to the Reformed church, and that was all they did was in German. They preached.
Oh,
So when my grandpa got married, my grandma couldn't speak German, so then they switched to the church
This one.
down here. Yeah,
Well, that's why that church became established, because there was
for the
a whole
English.
element that one.
Yeah.
Well, in fact, that was a big legal thing at that time. The states were all declaring, that you couldn't do that anymore. You had to have services in English. That was official of the state, you know.
Right.
So, that was always a sore point with people that
Yeah.
born, you know, through and through, they were German.
Yeah, Grandpa Doyen, he could talk German good.
Good talking. Yeah, called me Snickle Fritz, and I always thought it was an endearing term till I found out it was meant little stinker. And I just found that out, and I'm 68 years old.
I know he used to call me a little Woodenskieper, and I think I asked what that meant, and I don't know people that know.
what did he call you?
Woodenskieper, something like that.
No.
What'd you say?
Grandpa's little Woodenskieper, something like that, and I know it meant a worm. I won't say the last word. Because I asked somebody, they said that's what it means, so.
Yeah.
I never heard of that.
Really? And maybe I'm pronouncing it wrong too, I don't know.
No, I think,
But yeah, anything else? Julie?
Oh, you have got.
No,
She's too young.
I thought.
Tell me about it.
Like I said, the funeral home was in the business a long time, and my dad wasn't a licensed mortician, but I do remember the phone rang
Yeah.
at all times of the night. So, and that's when everybody just had one rotary dial phone.
Yep.
110R.
Yeah. I think Dad and your dad, they changed up going
Yeah.
along and then doing
Yeah.
the funeral services too.
Yeah.
Your
Yeah.
dad and Red helped.
And I remember it in the funeral home before they did the addition, that little parlor
Yeah.
they had.
On the
and
south
The
side.
sun, we called it the sun.
Some,
Yeah,
they'd
yeah,
move all the furniture out and put chairs in.
yeah. And otherwise it was a dining room.
Mm-hmm, right.
When did they sell to Hughesman's? When did Hughesman's next?
What's,
I think in the
It was
70s.
in the
Is
70s.
it on here?
it should be,
No, what?
when they sold the store.
It's out on the table.
Okay,
Okay.
right here.
have you ever wondered, excuse me,
No, it doesn't say.
what they will talk about in 100 years from now?
Right.
About us,
Yeah,
huh?
yeah, that's true, very true.
Yeah,
Hope it's all good.
I don't know, it'll all be good.
And I don't have a lot of stories, cause I don't remember Grandpa Doyen ever talking about how he grew up. Have you?
Most of them, most
Oh,
of
yeah.
them like that didn't.
I don't remember really one story. Now, like I said, my great aunt Louise, I wish I would have listened to her a little bit more because
get these? This would be-
she could tell stories. She was fun, but I don't remember any of them. So she was the youngest. That was a very big family.
Yes, yeah, 3 brothers and 6 girls.
Yeah. And 2 passed away. One is out in our St. Paul. He did not live very long. Ludwig. Mhm.
All right.
Yes. Well,
Any more
I'm-
questions?
any
I was
questions?
just gonna make
Yeah.
a comment. I remember back in the 50s that I went up to the Doyen furniture store and you could get corsages. So I got a corsage from my mother.
Really?
Yeah.
I
I
did
don't
too.
know where they got the flowers from, but
Our moms didn't like it.
yeah. They don't like
They,
corsages.
yeah, they didn't wear flowers.
Then,
Yeah, back in the day.
Yeah, that was back in Cindy and I thought we were doing something good. We were, because we always went to, the drugstore to get 25-cent chocolate marshmallow sundaes with nuts. And so then we thought, okay, we save our money, so we went to buy a corsage.
I know.
And they took it, but they really didn't really make too much of it, did they, Cindy?
It was Mother's Day.
Yeah.
it was from
so
Mother's
they
Day.
actually sold corsages?
Yeah.
Really?
Yep,
Oh, I
Yeah.
don't remember that either.
No.
Yep,
yep.
I don't- yeah,
Both
we-
remember that.
yeah. we thought we were doing something really nice.
Well-
Your mother probably thought you spent too much money.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
if we knew that, we would have bought more chocolate marshmallow sundaes. Yeah. We would say, hey, forget about the croissant.
I do remember that big glass in case, you know, when you walked in.
Mhm.
It had a bunch of old medicine bottles and stuff in there. And I'd have to clean and they'd, oh, just put it back in there. I would say, my dad always said, that was before they put the library up, but if they could go underneath the furniture store, there'd be a lot of old stuff in there. They just buried it all, that what didn't sell. So I almost asked when they built the library on top if I could go excavate underneath. Because Dad said there has to be a bunch of old stuff underneath there. So, because they just bulldozed it in.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember the old medicine bottles inside of
Elton
there.
Croyder.
Yeah, it was a glass.
Mhm.
Oh, that was a neat case.
Yeah. Well, that does it for me.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
Well, thank you for having us
Yeah.
and
Yes,
thanks for
thank you.
coming. Thanks.
Oh, thanks so much. And there are a lot more pictures back here for you guys to enjoy that the Doyens have brought today. So take a look at that. Help yourself to cookies, lemonade, tea. So enjoy. Thanks again for you guys.
And
Appreciate it a lot.
Thanks for coming.
Oh, guest book. If you haven't signed it, sign that.
Register.
So, let's
And if
see,
you have
and
any
remember,
questions on
take a
the
postcard with
You
you.
might be able to
Where
learn some
are
of
they?
them. We might be able to tell you who
Right up
they
here,
are. I
yes.
think I.
There's a whole bunch of them on that scanner.
There's a whole bunch
on there.